This is the Floridaville. Get to know the people behind the Florida names you know. I'm your host, Rosanna Catalano. On this episode, we get to know Stacey Steinberg, a law professor at the University of Florida and an author whose work has been quoted by many news outlets, including CNN, NPR, CBS News, The Atlantic, and The Washington Post. She writes about children and the concept of sharenting, which is the overuse of social media by parents to share content on their children. We're recording remotely today rather than in our podcast recording studio. I'm in my home in Tallahassee, and our guest today is Stacey Steinberg, who is speaking to us from her home in Gainesville, Florida. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
My family and I have been home practicing social distancing because of the coronavirus for more than a month now. How are you and your family coping? Are you able to work from home?
We are. It's been difficult and challenging because there's so many unknowns, I think, right now, and worried for people's safety. But as far as us and our little bubble, I think we're doing pretty well. I'm working from home. My husband is also an attorney, and he is working from home. And we have 3 kids who all have their own Zoom schedules. So between my teaching on Zoom and going to court on Zoom and my husband working and being on Zoom, I guess we're using a lot of bandwidth, if that's still the word that we use, to all get our work done. But it's been pretty good. We actually finished a puzzle last night, so I'd say we're winning.
Oh, fantastic. We've been attacking board games as well here in my house. So you supervise the Gator TeamChild Juvenile Law Clinic at the University of Florida's Law School. Can you tell us about your work there?
Sure. So first of all, I think I have the greatest job in the world, and I feel so lucky to have it and to be able to go to work, even though it's virtually right now, at the law school. At the law school right now, what I do is I run the Juvenile Law Clinic. And what that means is that I supervise advanced law students who are interested in juvenile law. And we, together with the students, we represent kids who are going through various forms of legal proceedings. Most of our cases involve kids who are in the dependency system, meaning they were abused or neglected or abandoned. And the dependency court, the child welfare court, is protecting them, trying to take care of them, and we are their voice in court. So we go to court and advocate for what the child wants. I work with a small handful of students, but we work very closely together. This semester, the students spent 9 hours. They got 9 hours of credit for the class, which equates to about 27 hours a week of work for the Juvenile Law Clinic. We also have kids who are involved in the delinquency system, kids who have special education needs, kids who need services through the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. Really, we run the gamut. The motto for the clinic is one child, one advocate, one voice. And so what we really try to do is to be a central hub for that child to make sure that all of their legal needs are addressed.
About how many kids are involved in your clinic? How many cases do you handle?
So it depends. Anything from, I'd say, 14 to 35, depending on what the needs are in the community and how many students I have in the clinic. Some cases are more intensive than others. And so what I try to do is to ensure that not only are the kids that we represent getting excellent representation, but that the students are able to get meaningful feedback on their work. Our mission is multifaceted. So while part of it is serving the kids and serving the community, a big part of it is teaching students how to be lawyers. And so we are an in-house law firm. And with every decision that we make as a clinic, with every document that we file, we really try to take the time to first of all, make sure it's right, but to also use it as a teaching opportunity so that if students experience that something similar in their law practice, they will have a frame of reference to think about it and to know that they spent time talking about it, working through it, studying it with a professor.
You're an author of many articles and books. Can you share with us the focus of your writing and research?
Sure. I think I'm kind of an accidental scholar, an accidental author. I've always loved to write, but I wouldn't say that I grew up thinking I was particularly good at writing. I was on the debate team and really thrived in student government and trial team going through college and law school. Writing was just something that I did for fun in my spare time. But as I got older and started to write even more, I got an amazing opportunity to start to write for more public outlets. And my writing really focused on my experiences as a mother, combined with my experience as a lawyer. I think I was really taken aback by how difficult it was to blend those two roles. I went to law school like prepared to, change the world with my law degree. But, I think I always thought I could do it all. I could have kids and I could work and it would be pretty seamless. No one ever really explained to me that doing it all at once is really, really challenging. And so writing became an outlet for me to express that. My research now really focuses on the intersection of a child's right to privacy and a parent's right to share their child's story on social media. And so it kind of found its genesis in self-reflection. I was thinking a lot about children's rights because I've always been, a lawyer that focuses on issues involving kids. But I was also a mom who loved to share on social media and someone who had recently found that photography was a hobby that, I really love. And I was helping families share their stories on social media as well. And so those practices that I had kind of culminated into this question that I was struggling with what part of the story is mine to tell as a parent, and what part of the story of a child's life really needs to be left for them to decide if and when they tell it themselves. And so I wrote, at that point, I was writing short pieces for the Washington Post on parenting column. And I wrote a very short essay about this kind of struggle that I was going through. And at the time, the University of Florida Levin College of Law had just hired its new dean, Dean Laura Rosenberry, and she is a children's rights scholar. And she really encouraged me to dig deeper and to think about looking at this issue through a legal lens. At first, I was really nervous about it because even though I was teaching legal writing at the time and I had confidence filing a document with the court, I just didn't see myself as an academic writer. But Dean Rosenberry was really, she was really inspirational. She was willing to work with me. She'd meet me at a coffee shop on a Sunday, and I got through this. And there were a number of other law professors who also helped me. And I wrote an academic piece, which I think was the first academic article, especially in the United States, that looked at what is now often called sharenting, or the intersection of a parent's right to share and a child's interest in privacy. So a lot of my work has stemmed from that and continuing to look at children's privacy in the context of social media and how kids use social media. But I really expand a lot. Last night, I was up until the wee hours working on a piece about childhood trauma and how stress from COVID-19 might affect kids. So I'd say my limitation is only that I generally write about issues involving kids.
Can we look for that COVID-19 piece somewhere? Can we look forward to it? I
hope so. It's been tentatively accepted by the New York Times, and so it still has to go through a few rounds of editing, and I don't know when it will come out, but my fingers are crossed that it will run in the New York Times within the next couple weeks.
Oh, fantastic. Your upcoming book, Growing Up Shared, comes out in a couple of months. Can you share with our listeners what your book is about?
Sure. My book, Growing Up Shared, is, I like to call it a nonfiction beach read. It's not something that is going to be super heavy that you need to sit down with a highlighter to read, but it's going to be a very informational book about how parents can share on social media in a smarter way and what we can do to keep our family safe in a no privacy world. It combines some memoir. It talks about how I got into this work and how I've personally struggled with figuring out how to walk this fine line of sharing but not oversharing. And it pulls from research from all over the world with how our kids are affected by the information we share online and how the digital footprint that we leave in childhood's wake could affect them one day when they get older. I'm really excited for the book, and I think that it will be something that not only parents can appreciate and get a lot out of, but I think grandparents, aunts, uncles, and definitely policymakers really should read the book. A lot of what I include in the book is kind of a legal explanation or a legal overview of First Amendment protections and privacy interests or privacy rights. And it includes some ideas for how the state or the federal government might be able to better tailor their policies so that they are able to help protect kids online. It's not just about limiting parents. It's really about educating parents and also thinking about shifting some of the burdens onto companies and marketers with regards to what they do with the information that parents share.
While researching your background for this interview today, I came across a quote of yours that I think hits home for me as a parent raising kids in the age of social media and perhaps hits home with some other parents. You said, "We're in no way trying to silence parents' voices. At the same time, we recognize that children might have an interest in entering adulthood free to create their own digital footprint." Do you have any advice for parents like me trying to navigate these digital waters?
Sure. I think the first piece of advice I would give parents who are ready to come to the table and really think about this is not to judge themselves. One of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou, and she says, "Do the best you can until you know better, and then do better." It's actually on my Facebook profile page as like my quote, I guess. And it really defines how I look at online sharing. There is no playbook to guide parents as they try to figure out how to share online. There's no way to look at what my parents did and compare it to what your parents did and see how that affected us. We didn't grow up watching people share and kind of thinking to ourselves how it would be best, or having teachers talk to us about the importance of a digital footprint. We didn't have TV shows or sitcoms that made fun of parents oversharing. We had nothing. And so really, we are the first generation of parents to raise our kids in a digital environment. And our kids are the first generation to grow up shared. And what that means is that we need to start from the beginning and think about what right do kids have in controlling their digital footprint, and what rights do we have as parents to tell our stories, and how can both of those rights exist in harmony? I say that I'm not trying to silence parents' voices, not just because parents have a right to speak, but because parents have really important things to say. And I want to make sure that parents don't run away from the power of narratives simply because because I wrote a book that said sharenting is bad, because I'm not saying that. I want parents to think about what they say and be thoughtful about it, and really just come to the table so that we could all have a conversation about it, because there's just so much we still don't know.
This episode of The Floridaville is brought to you by Rocket Ship Consultants. Let us help you launch your career, your business, your political campaign, or your podcast. For more information, visit our website at rocketshipconsultants.com.
How did you make the decision to write a book, and how did you get it published?
Great question. So when I started to write and write about sharenting, or write about kids' privacy on social media, it was kind of slow going at first. The first article that I wrote about the topic was in 2015. By 2016, I was presenting the topic at the AALS, Association for American Law Schools, kind of just as like a very basic idea, like maybe a 10-minute presentation. And I was kind of slowly picking away at the process of writing and figuring out that I actually really enjoyed writing and doing the legal research. At the end of 2016, I had the opportunity to present some of this research with a colleague who at the time was a pediatrician at the University of Florida, UF Health. And we presented our research to the American Academy of Pediatrics. Now, we thought we were going to the AAP conference, which was held in California that year, to a boardroom to maybe 20 or 30 people. But somehow we ended up presenting it in like the grand ballroom to 2,000 people. And all of a sudden, this little idea that I was thinking about became a huge idea that many journalists in the media wanted to interview me about, many doctors were interested in it. And all of a sudden, it just kind of hit me that maybe I do have something important to say, but even more importantly, maybe this is a topic that other people want to talk about. And so that conference was in November. And at the time, it was like daily news articles about this, intersection. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, have you ever thought of writing a book?" And I kind of laughed because, I've thought about writing a book since I was about 8 years old, but I still really struggled to say, yes, I'm a writer. Even though I had been writing, I still just had so much insecurity about it. But it was something that was always on my bucket list. And when you teach, at the time I was teaching in the first year curriculum, and I was pretty much done. It was in December. And so I decided to reach out to some agents. And I was really fortunate to find my agent. Her name is Stacey Glick, and she guided me through the process of writing a proposal. Things really slowed down, though, after I wrote the proposal. I wrote it and we sent it out to publishers in the beginning of 2017, but it took 18 months before that proposal turned into a book deal. I was told no many, many times by many publishers. And what's interesting is that proposal over those 18 months really changed with each rejection that I got. I think had I written the book at the end of 2016, when I had just kind of come back from the American Academy of Pediatrics, my book would have taken on a really different shape than it takes on now. And what I mean by that is when I started doing this research, my pendulum swung really fast. I went from sharing all the time to feeling like, I guess, really guilty for sharing. And so everything that I shared, like it was I thought maybe I didn't think I should be sharing. And so my book was really prescriptive, I guess. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but like it was telling parents not to share and telling parents that they should be scared to share. And here's all the reasons why parents should be scared to share. But over those 18 months, I revised and rewrote that proposal so many times and talked to so many parents and continued to research this topic. And the proposal that did, I guess you could say, bite, was actually a very different book than the book that I initially set out to write. And I think that the book is, it kind of comes back to that quote that you said, that we're not trying to silence parents' voices. A lot, I guess, changed for me during that year. I really saw the power of narratives and how being brave and vulnerable could really benefit an individual, benefit a family, benefit communities. And the role of narrative and the role of being open and sharing takes a higher precedence in the book now than it would have back then. And so in some ways, I'm really glad that it took 18 months to find a publisher, because I don't think I was ready to write it, when I first set out to, which is interesting because if you would have told me in December of 2016 that I wouldn't have a book deal until May of 2019, I don't think I would have kept my butt in the chair. But I did end up finally in getting an offer from Sourcebooks after I had revised the proposal. Ironically, I got the offer the same week that I got my new job as the supervisor of the Gator TeamChild Juvenile Law Clinic. So it was quite a busy week, and I wasn't able to actually fully accept the offer for another couple of months while I kind of got my feet planted in the law clinic.
Amazing how timing works.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for listeners with expertise that want to write and publish a book?
I think that my advice would be to start writing, to give yourself a goal for how many words you want to write a day, whether it's 100 or 1,000, and just let it take shape on the page. I think so many people are scared that they have to have the perfect word, that they don't write any words at all. But those first drafts are so important. Those first words are so important. And so I would recommend that if somebody wants to write a book, that they, even if life is busy, that they don't wait to write their first sentence. And I'd also say that it's really important to figure out a way to enjoy the process. And I'm still working on that. Enjoy the process of writing instead of being so anxious and excited for the day that the book is published, or the day that the contract comes out, or the day that the article comes out. So I guess my advice is to sit down and work at it and to find a community. I'm really fortunate in that I have a community on Facebook that anyone who's interested in writing can join. It's called #AmWriting. And I have some really great writing mentors in there who lift me up. And I listen to podcasts that the founders of the group do. And it kind of gives me like a weekly reminder of why I do this work and how I can do this work better.
Can you give that website again?
Sure. The podcast is #AmWriting, and it is both a Facebook group and a podcast. I think that I'm not sure the website, #AmWriting is what it is called. And they're also on Twitter. It looks like their homepage is amwritingpodcast.com, actually.
In addition to writing, you're also a photographer. On your website, staceysteinberg.com, you share a number of beautiful photographs. I noticed that many of your photographs were of children fighting cancer or other illness. How did you get involved in taking these touching photos?
Thank you so much. So before I was a law professor, I at one point I was prosecutor and then an attorney for Children's Legal Services. And in both of those roles, I saw kids going through unimaginable pain, but I would also see them laughing and smiling during their depositions or coming to my office and drawing me beautiful pictures. And I was just always struck how much beauty could exist alongside pain. And I think that when I started teaching and I wasn't in that world that was so full of vulnerability, I missed it. And photography was my avenue to be able to kind of get back into that world. And I was really fortunate. Gainesville is such a cool town, and that, you're so connected with your friends and your neighbors and people who work in different fields. And so I had friends who worked at UF Health, and they connected me with their social workers, who connected me with patients who wanted pictures taken of their kids. And it kind of just sprung from there. And so at one point, I did it so often, I called it the Shared Hope Project. And I offer free pictures to families who have kids going through chronic medical conditions and issues. I did it much more back in 2014, 2015, 2016. I then met a little girl named Phoebe who passed away at the age of 6 from a DIPG brain tumor. And during her last 29 months of life, I photographed her somewhere between 12 and 15 times. And she really became my project. My photography project was really trying to be there for her as much as I could. And her death has really left a profound impact on me that I don't think that I've fully processed yet. And so I've been hesitant to kind of go back into that world. I think you asked me about photography generally and how I got into it. I can't really say. I mean, I think I've always loved taking pictures. One day I would be creative on, Snapfish at the time with how I edited the pictures. And when my husband was in law school and I wanted a nicer camera, and my friends were complimenting my pictures, they offered to pay me $20 or $30 to take their pictures. And a few friends had me come over to their houses. I took their pictures, and before I knew it, I had enough money to buy a digital SLR. And a few months later, I had more business than I knew what to do with photography wise. I don't have a photography business anymore. I do take pictures sometimes for friends. I'll do occasionally take pictures for kids who are going through really difficult things. But I found that I had way too many balls in the air, and photography was one that I kind of had to let fall.
It's understandable. You have so many interests in your professional life. Did you have a lot of interests when you were a kid?
Yeah, and it's funny. I was looking with lately. People have been posting their high school graduation pictures online, and so my high school yearbook was out. And I think in a lot of ways, I was really similar to how I am now. I've always been really involved in my community. It's funny. I think I act very extrovertedly, but I do relish, time alone too. Like this time at home has been really a nice break for me. But I did have a lot of interests. I always had, a small group of friends. I was never popular, but we always kind of did our own thing. And I would say I had a lot of interest as a child.
What was your home life like growing up?
I think it was pretty great. I think the thing I struggled with the most was kind of figuring out who I was and what my identity was. But I have really supportive parents. I was born in New York. My mom's parents came here during the Holocaust and lost a lot of families we lost a lot of family during World War II. And so I was always brought up with a really strong appreciation for freedom and for having, enough to eat and a bed to sleep on. And that was kind of ingrained in me from really early on, just how fragile the world is and how important it is to appreciate things. I was the first in my family to go to college. So when I was growing up, my parents and my grandparents and most of my aunts and uncles, there were family businesses that they ran. Jewelry stores and Hallmark stores were two of the biggest things that were going on. And I moved to Florida. My parents moved to Florida with us when I was going into 5th grade. And we moved to Wellington in West Palm Beach. And it took me a little while to kind of figure out, my new surroundings and my new world. But we enjoyed it. I think that I have a little brother and things are pretty good. My mom and dad are still really involved in our lives now. And I think it's really hard for them to not be able to come up and spend time with their grandkids right now because they're in West Palm and we're here and we're doing our best to social distance.
Yeah, this has been a tough time, I think, for everyone. You attended college at the University of Florida as well as law school, making you a double Gator like me. What made you choose the University of Florida?
I think, I was just so taken aback by its beauty. I remember coming here and we stayed at a hotel that was on the corner of University and 13th Avenue that overlooks the business college, and these beautiful buildings that, were so stately. And it was really amazing to me that I could have that kind of opportunity. Like, I mean, I guess I always knew I would go to college, or I always wanted to go to college, but it was at UF that it really hit me that this was something that I could do and maybe be successful and stand on my own with it. There was this walk that we took from the business school down to the Hippodrome, which anyone who's been to Gainesville knows it's not a long walk, but it's a really beautiful walk through kind of old Gainesville buildings. And at that moment, I just knew that this is where I wanted to be. And I applied to a few different schools. I got far less money offered to me through UF. I still have a lot of debt to UF, or not to UF, but it definitely cost me more to go to UF than the other schools that I could have gone to. But I was sold when I came and did my campus tour. That was really what did it for me. And then as far as law school, I think I found myself, like, who I was, what was important to me, how to have a good time and make good friendships more in undergrad than I did at any other point in my life. I was really involved in student government. I got involved in Florida Blue Key. I met my husband my second day of school, my freshman year, at a frat party. I just grew roots in this town, and I grew them really fast. Those 3.5 years in undergrad, really, I learned so much about myself and about how I could be independent and on my own. And so when it was time to think about law schools, I was graduating a semester early. I had done preview. I was a preview staff member that summer, and I was about to graduate a semester early. And I decided that I was only going to apply to UF because they had the spring entry class at the time. And if I didn't get in, or if I decided not to go there, my plan was to just wait until the next fall to apply. But I got accepted to UF Law to start in the spring, and I just didn't see any reason why not to. Like, I just wasn't ready to leave. And so I graduated UF undergrad in December of, I think, 2000, I think. And then I started law school in 2001 in January. I did, I don't know if you'd call it a nervous breakdown, but I did decide a month into law school that I made a terrible mistake and tried to drop out and move to DC. But the pull of Gainesville brought me back pretty quickly.
I can remember thinking that many times my first year of law school, maybe my second and third as well. Go Gators. Yeah. Tell us what your first job was out of law school and what impact it's had on your career.
My first job at a law school was working for the state attorney's office in the 8th Judicial Circuit under State Attorney Bill Cervone. It was, I think I didn't set out to become a prosecutor. If you would have told me my first year of law school that I would have become a prosecutor, I don't think I would have believed you. But I had a few intern experiences that were good, but I then had an internship experience at the state attorney's office that was great. That got to work with some incredible mentors who really showed me that the line between work and my free time, or what I would want to do in my free time, would get thinner and thinner because the work was so meaningful and the people that I was interacting with were people that I wanted to be around, that I just really felt at home at the state attorney's office. And so I started in the misdemeanor division, handling assaults and batteries, minor petty thefts. And then I moved into the domestic violence unit not too long later, handling intimate partner violence. I really enjoyed the flow of courtroom life, the litigation pieces of it. I loved the negotiations and the trials and the meeting with the victims and witnesses. And it was a really good place to start as a lawyer who loved public speaking more than the written word at the time.
After working at the state attorney's office, I see you worked at the Florida Department of Children and Families. What was your role at DCF?
I joined the Children's Legal Services part of DCF. And so our job was to work alongside child protective investigators and family care counselors. What I really liked about that job, and one of the reasons that I switched, is because I was ready to be part of more of a collaborative team in decision making. It was difficult sometimes at the state attorney's office to handle such a high case volume and to be kind of in an office on your own, making a lot of really big decisions that would affect a lot of people. And what I loved about DCF is that the decisions that we made happened more around the table. And our job was to help caseworkers decide whether they had legal sufficiency to take a certain action. And then the caseworkers would go forward and decide what was best for their kids. So there was always this two-tiered approach of, is there legal sufficiency for this action? And then is this what's best for this child? And so I stayed there for a few years.
After DCF, where did you go?
I went to the law school, actually.
You're an author, child advocate, attorney, photographer, professor, and mom. Which one of those titles gives you the most joy?
Being a mom. I mean, I don't even have to say being a mom is definitely the part that gives me the most joy.
And I think we hear your little ones in the background.
Yes. If you'll give me a moment, I can take care of that.
That's okay. Which one of those titles provides you with the most frustration?
The most frustration, probably being a mom as well.
and which one of those provides you with the most pride?
Definitely being a mom.
Tell our listeners how they can get a copy of your new book, Growing Up Shared.
For now, you can pre-order it on Amazon. It's available if you just type in Growing Up Shared and Stacey Steinberg in the Amazon search box. You can get it that way. I believe it's also available through many other online book retailers. Really, anywhere books are sold should be able to order it for you. I've seen it through Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. So all of these places can give you copies, can get you on the pre-order list. You can also visit my website, www.staceysteinberg.com, and the links are right there. Or you can follow me on Facebook, facebook.com/growingupshared. And lastly, if you're on Twitter, you can see me on Twitter and see the link to get a copy of the book.
We like to end our show with a little fun by asking all of our guests the same 7 questions. What would people be surprised to know about you?
Probably that I have terrible imposter syndrome. You listed a lot of things that I do. I feel like I'm an imposter in almost all of them, except being a mom. I think that one I don't feel like too much of an imposter. I'm not sure I'm doing it right all the time. Probably doing it wrong most of the time. But in all of my other roles, I definitely have terrible imposter syndrome. And I think people would be really surprised to know how nervous I am every time I put my work into the world.
When you have guests in town, where is your favorite place to take them?
Amelia's Fine Italian Restaurant downtown. One of our very best friends owns the restaurants. He went to law school with me. When he first bought the restaurant, we helped peel off wallpaper and paint it before it was professionally decorated. And the food is just absolutely outstanding.
What is the name of a book you recently read that you could not put down, or the name of a show you enjoyed binge watching?
The most recent book I read was The Red Tent, which is a book I read probably 15 years ago and saw it and wanted to reread it. It's by Anita Diamond, and it's just a book that was really meaningful and left me thinking afterwards. Mrs. Everything by Jennifer Weiner is a more recent book that came out, and that one also was just so delightful to read and left me wanting more.
Among your close family and friends, what are you best known for?
I think I'm probably best known for being spontaneous, kind of unpredictable, both with what I might want to do for the day, where we might want to go eat, or what career path I might want to try out.
If you have a nickname, who gave it to you?
My high school classmates, when I had an unfortunate incident with a series circuit in the physics lab. It's Sparky.
Sparky, that's fantastic.
Sparky, yeah.
If you knew you could not fail, what would you attempt?
I think not to be nervous when I put my work into the world.
And lastly, what are the top 3 things you love about living in Florida?
Fall, which is interesting because we're recording this in spring, but I love the fall in North Central Florida. I love how connected we all are. I mean, Florida sometimes gets a bad rap, but we really are so well connected with each other. And, we have these different cultures and populations and all over the state. But I do feel like, at least for me, I feel connected to all corners of the state. And I'd say third is the University of Florida. I think that this town, Gainesville, this campus, it's like this oasis in, it's a place that I love to drive down the roads, that I love to be at. I wish everybody could live in a town that they appreciated as much as I appreciate Gainesville.
I would have to concur with you. I love Gainesville and the University of Florida. It has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Be sure to subscribe to The Floridaville on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, or any of your favorite podcasting platforms. For more information about the show, go to our website, thefloridaville.com.